Good evening. Welcome to another interesting program of the International Grapevine. This is your host, Wallingford Lee. Tonight on the International Grapevine, we want to talk a little bit about the Panama Canal and the Zonians. In Zonians, what we're talking about is not only about the canal, but where folks live in the canal zone and stuff like that. Our first program that we did before was very much well received and interesting. So we want to talk about this beautiful wonder that Panama has. It gives us a great deal of pleasure and, of course, happiness and satisfaction to have our special guest, who was the same special guest that we had the first time. I'm talking about Mr. Luis Marshall, who happened to be a adjunct professor of criminal justice at Strayer University in Douglas, Georgia. Luis, welcome to our program. You did a wonderful job, and again, the public have asked for you, so I said, let's get you on board again.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that we wanted to talk about a little bit is how important was the canal zone to Panama?
The canal was extremely important to Panama because, first of all, that seems to be the only avenue whereas Panama was able to get their independence. Because keeping in mind that Panama was basically considered like a province of Colombia.
Yes.
Because Panama separated first from Spain, 1821. Now they were under Colombia. So this whole event with the Panama Canal, that plan of action, gave Panama that opportunity because when Colombia refused to sign off on the building of the Panama Canal, the United States wisely turned to Dr. Amador Guerrero and the other politicians in Panama and said, you guys should get your own independence. That way you can handle your own treaty. And sure enough, Panama moved in that direction, and Colombia did not do anything adversarial as far as attacking Panama, because they knew just by demonstration, the United States set up the ships on the ocean and cut off the avenue from Colón back to the capital, because that was by the railroad. And we know that the United States had a great interest in controlling that. So now the soldiers, Colombian soldiers in Colón, could not get to Panama City. So bottom line was, out of that gave the birth of Panama as a nation. So that was one step leading Panama into their independency. Now, as far as the canal added to that, provided Panama now with an avenue for commerce, industry, housing, different facilities such as health care. All of these things came together because now we had a major power assembling itself into the Republic of Panama as a country.
And not only that, they gave Panama the backing, and that was a great backing. They were able to get their independence on November 3rd, 1903, and from there they move on. Tell me something that always bothers me. Did the Americans own the canal zone, or that was still Panama territory?
No, the American owned the canal zone based on the agreement for building the Panama Canal. It's approximately 11 miles, and that's disputed. Some people say 8, some say, but let's work with 11 miles. And they had total control legally over that territory, whereas they provided their own system of government, including the courts, prison, housing.
Wow.
All of these disciplines were built on these territories, and Panama had absolutely no control over that. That was the United States stretch of land, ruled and controlled by the United States according to their own needs.
Only Americans lived in the canal zone, or you had employees living in the canal zone?
You had Americans, and obviously you had all of the West Indians that were brought to Panama to build the canal in 1904. They did not arrive until 1904, most of the West Indians. So you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 37,000 people. And so you had them, plus you had the Americans. And the Americans initially, when they arrived in terms of leadership, once the canal got started in 1904, the United States tried to draw more Americans into Panama. And one of the methods that they used to get people to come was providing the services that I mentioned. And obviously the Gorgas hospital, they started to think about building a hospital. It wasn't nothing like what we see in Panama as the Gorgas hospital, but he was the one that basically dealt with the malaria mosquito, because he did the same thing in Cuba. He's the one that found the remedies for that in Cuba before he came to Panama. So now, with all of this put in place, the United States wisely figured, if I'm going to get my people to come to a strange land, we need to provide housing for families. So now the Americans start bringing complete families, not only the person that's going to work, but his or her family. We know 99.9% were men, but now they were bringing their spouse and other relatives. The blacks did not have that possibility in the early parts of building the Panama Canal. It took a couple of years after before blacks start assembling and bringing, they're allowed to bring women into Panama to be, part of their livelihood after work. Even Roosevelt was a little worried. He said, what are these women going to be coming for? Prostitution? And I guess whoever spoke to him let him know that, no, we adjusted this for our people, and it working very well. So let's let the blacks have their family assembly to some degree. Not the same type of housing, not the same type of conveniences.
But at least they were living on the canal zone, which was very important because they were close to the canal when they had to go to work and stuff like that. What happened if an employee got laid off? Did he have to move off the canal zone, or he still could live in the canal zone?
Unfortunately, if you got laid off, you have to move. I was a victim of that. I think I mentioned to you before.
Yes.
My father died, and the procedure is they put a notice on the door, and it says, I think that was exactly 90 days that you have to exit from the housing and leave that zone. That's why it's called Canal Zone, because it was just a zoning area, and you had no rights, even though you're born in the Republic of Panama. You were trespassing. If you didn't have a relative or family member working for the government, you were out of place. So now you lost your job, your family, father, whoever it is. You are mandated to leave. You didn't own any housing on the canal zone. All of this was just part of the operational process. There was no ownership.
I would have to imagine that President Roosevelt had to know the value of building the canal and the convenience of the canal when we talk about meeting the Pacific and the Atlantic and shortening the trips from coming from any part of the world. So he must have known the real value that the canal zone would have been for the United States of America, would you say?
Yes, and he's not the original person who thought about this. We go back to Charles V, who had this idea, and I think I mentioned in the past that his government was not amenable to it, and eventually, the French was leading the charge, but unfortunately they underestimated the terrain and the monsoon rains, so they failed miserably. In fact, about 22,000 people died while the French were trying to build a canal.
Wow, amazing. So I would say that the French really got out of it because they could not handle it. And the fact that they lost so many manpower, over 20-something thousand people dying from the Caribbean, and I think they were close to a bankruptcy. So
yes,
will that lead
correct.
into the fact where the Americans came in and took over, and how did they take over the canal or the building of the canal?
Well, it was based on the treaty called Bonavarila. And they sat down and did that treaty, and Panama out of that got $10 million. And the fee annually for Panama would have been $250,000 annually. So just looking at that and looking today, whereas the canal is providing Panama with $2.6 billion, they were getting a spit in the bucket.
I know. Well, it's all important to notice also that for the French to go away, the Americans gave them $40 million to go away and work out that thing with Panama, where they gave Panama $10 million and $250,000 a month. So obviously there was great vision as to what the canal can produce for them, why they gave up that type of money, and why it was important to them to build the canal.
Right.
Well, if we go further, how many boats go through the canal, would you say, on a daily basis or on a monthly basis?
An average of 13 boats per day. And I say average because you have to look at the size of these containers. Some of them are extremely large, and they're moving at a very slow pace because they are being pulled by tugboats, and then the mules pull them up over into the locks. So it's time consuming, but about 13 boats per day, averagely 8 hours.
Wow. So you're talking about 13 boats coming into the canal on a daily basis. That's what we're talking about?
Yes. And remember, the canal is transiting in both directions.
Well, Mr. Marshall, one of the most important things that I always wanted to know is how many ships come through the canal on a daily basis or on a monthly basis?
Okay. And on an average, you have 36 ships per day, averagely 13,000 per year. And this is based on the tonnage. The average ship weighs about 150,000 tons.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have the very large tankers, it may delay and take a little more time to go through the locks. So that's an average, but annually I can tell you it comes out to about 13,000, and that's consistent number with the last 3-4 years, 13,000.
Well, it goes without saying that the Panama Canal is a money-making machine. That's one of the reasons why the American invested so high in building the canal. They knew not only you could cut time between coming from the Pacific to the Atlantic, but they saw, as a capital society that they saw the value of the canal and the amount of money that could be made by the canal and how important it was to them and also to Panama, won't you say?
Yes, along with military strategic location. Militarily, the canal, again, because of its geographical location, you have to realize it's 8,000 miles if you go all the way down to Cape Horn. Here you are that you can cut off all of that distance by simply going through the canal and you'll be in the next side of the world. So militarily, that was one of the high points, along with the financial gain.
Otherwise than financial gain, I want to go back to one thing. We know for a fact that Colombia was in the middle of things when the French leave and the American wanted the canal. Did the Americans had to pay the Colombian any money to leave, or just the revolt of the Panamanian soldiers and the backing of the American made Colombia move out?
Well, once Colombia left, and this is ironic because it took quite a few years before the United States negotiation in April 1914, after the building of the Panama Canal. President Harding was the one that negotiated along with the Senate to give Colombia a certain amount of money, even though it was long after the canal was built. Now, this money did not come to fruition until 1921. And I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million.
Very interesting indeed. As we get back here in the international grapevine, we're going to continue talking about the importance of the Panama Canal, how important it was to the American and, of course, to Panama, and what it meant to the entire industry and what a great money maker it was. We'll be right back on the international grapevine talking about the Panama Canal. And we're back here in an international grapevine talking about the Panama Canal, the importance that it was to the area, joining the Pacific with the Atlantic, how much time was saved, and the building of it, how it cost over 20,000 lives while the French were building it. And when the American took over the canal to build it, and to bring up the canal and stuff like that, it cost another 5,600 lives. We have to give credit to these men that came from the Caribbean as workers to complete this canal, and how important of a job that they did. All the tough things that they went through, the malaria, the humidity, the rain, and all what they went through, and more important, the losses of life that it took to build this canal. Obviously, the Panama Canal is one of the biggest wonders of the world, and how important, how much money and interest it brought to America. Our special guest, who has been kind to be on our program to talk about the sensitive things and importance of the canal, Mr. Louis Marshall, who's very knowledgeable about these things regarding the canal. Louis, would you say that the canal, otherwise than being a great interest for the American, it also brought a certain amount of great income to the Panamanian also before it was turned over to them by the Americans?
As I said, it's a new country, Panama. We just got our birth, and here comes one of the marvels of the century being built right on our shores. So that in itself boosts Panama from what you call, and I don't like the word third world country, but it took Panama in rapid fashion to accelerate in our growth economically, socially, politically, and health-wise. So all of these disciplines that we normally look forward to. In fact, because of the building of the Panama Canal, many of the West Indians left the West Indies because, remember, slavery, as far as the British, they ended slavery in the early 1800s. So you had a lot of West Indians idle because the big farms, as far as sugarcane, was not in demands like it used to be, because now a lot of Europe was focusing on the beets, sugar, that fruit, the beets, sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, that was it was no longer a large market. So a lot of the land barons did not need to employ as many people as they used to. So here comes this opportunity, this little country called Panama, getting ready to build this canal. So it was an adventure for them to move on because there was not much expectation where they were at the time.
Well, it's very, very interesting. One of the things that bothers me the most, and when I open up the second half, I talked about not giving credit to the people from the Caribbean to build this canal, the amount of lives that were lost, and the importance of the job that they did. And you and I know, as we read through these books, and the French could not handle it, and they went bankrupt and stuff like that. And I'm not sure the folks from the Caribbeans really got the true credit for building that canal. But so as we move further, let's talk a little bit about the locks. How the locks work in the Panama Canal and the importance of the locks.
Okay, the locks are part of we always talk about Gatun locks. Mm-hmm. What you have here is 77 kilometers, 3 sets of locks, totaling 12, 3 sets. So you have artificial water, and the procedure is you're using flotation and gravity, raising the ship up to, the locks is raising that ship up to 54 feet above sea level. And it's depositing it just like how you took something in your hand and move it over. And now you deposit over to Pedro Miguel locks, which is 31 feet above sea level. Then you lead that into the 3 locks in Gatun. So here is this tonnage of steel and all this weight simply been lifted by water. And they have the valves beneath the locks that is bringing up the pressure of the water and raising that ship. So now those locks gate closes. So now the ship is at a different level. So now the gates in the front of it opens. So the ship does flow into that second channel. The one behind it closes. And that's the procedure. Now it starts to descend. Initially it was ascending. Now it's descending on the other side, which is into the next ocean. Whether it's from Pacific to Atlantic or from Atlantic to Pacific. It's lowering it. It's just like you had something in your hand and you bring it down to 3 different levels and just let it go. And now it's on an even keel, and it's going to flow right into the ocean. So the locks are very, very important for the operation.
I find it amazing that, the geniuses of them building the canal, because it opens up, the ships comes in, and it raises the ship. That's the amazing thing about it, with all that weight and stuff like that.
And it's in fresh water from Gatun Lake.
Wow,
Remember now,
amazing.
because the two oceans can't meet. It will overflow Panama. So in order to control the water, you have to have a system that says, okay, you got up to this point in the ocean. Now we're going to let you come through the lake. Now you have fresh water. But now with that water pressure and pushing it up into a confinement space, you're raising it up, because the water have to keep rising, because the walls not going to permit it to go anywhere else. So that's the fresh water that raises it up. And when I was going through the canal once, the tour guide said to me, because of the two waters meeting at some point, because you can't avoid the ocean still coming in at some point, you have fishes that live in the canal that can live in both waters, fresh water and salt water. I thought he was kidding me. He said, no, you have to.
It's factual.
Yeah, now they have adapted, because of the amount of salt water that's still going to get in. You can't completely isolate it. And I said to him, are you serious? So, but when we got halfway in through the smallest boat that we were on, he called me to look over the edge, and I saw all the fishes. He said, wow. You see, these fishes are healthy and swimming around. They've been
amazing.
In water. Because when the locks open, the last locks, it opened in what? To the ocean.
Interesting. One of the most important things, again, the canal is a wonder of the world. Who worked the lock system, and how do they do that? And from what distance they're working the lock system?
The lock system is located inside of the building of the format like a tower. It's located, you have to walk along the same gates, on the top of the gates, into that room. And the actual levers that I saw were no bigger than my thumb. And it's a matter of you moving it in the proper direction. And at that point, it manages to open up the gates. It synchronizes with the gates, and the gates will open at that point. Obviously, depending on which gate you are referring to at the time, the waters will either rise or recede, depending if you're lowering or raising the water level to receive that ship that's coming in the opposite direction. So yes, the towers operate the levers, and it is a phenomenal to see these tremendous gates opening strictly based on just the maneuvering of a small item. It appears to be such a small item, but yet still, it is the principal tool that is controlling these gates that are going to open and close. Obviously, all of the machineries are located below the gates. I had the opportunity to go down there also, and you could see these big wheels like grinders that interact, and they're turning in between, interlocking with each other. And those are the ones that create that revolution that allows the gate to open, expand, and contract.
It's amazing, considering the year that the canal was built, that that great technology existed at that moment, and the creativity of those who built the canal. Let's talk a little bit. What is the cost to transit through the canal?
The cost of an average ship going through the canal is about $150,000. Now, some are more expensive because of the cargo. So you have a combination of the size of the ship along with the cargo in terms of the tonnage, the weight that it's carrying. So averagely $150,000 is a more or less a ballpark figure under regular and normal circumstance.
Very interesting. Again, the canal, again, is one of the greatest wonders of the world. In what year did the Americans turn the canal over to Panama, and what was the conditions?
Well, it's called the Carter-Torrijos Treaty. The two of them sat down, and some of the information varies in terms of the actual date, because this transpired with an agreement that the United States had with Panama, and this was done in 19
77,
1979.
79. Okay. Okay.
Right. And after that agreement, you had a span of 10 years before they actually reduce everything completely. Because remember now, this contract involves closing military bases, housing, all of the different institutions that were part of the canal zone with a timetable that were decreased over a period of 10 years. And the whole combination was December the 31st, 1999. That finalized everything. So you're heading right into the year 2000. That was
very interesting. Who was the American president at the time that signed off on that? And I'm sure they had to have approval from the Congress and the Senate of the United States to conduct such a business to turn over the Panama Canal back to Panama.
Well, the one who sat down and conducted the treaty was President Carter. President Carter was the one who finalized it. And the person in power in the United States at the time when everything finalized was President Clinton.
Very interesting indeed. Well, one of the things that I'm baffled about, I keep hearing rumors that China is about to take over the canal. I don't think it's true, but I want to bring it up so that we can talk heavily about the position of China and just exactly what is their picture there in the Panama Canal.
Well, unfortunately, and I say the word unfortunately for various reasons, China right now controls the largest terminal. You have what is called on the Atlantic side, Margarita Island Port, which connects to the free zone. China controls that. Sadly enough, China also controls the Balboa and Cristobal terminals. And from what I understood and read, China have a contract for 50 years controlling those two ports. Now, this expands beyond Panama. China have done the same with 2/3 of the ports in the world. Strategically, China have done this in such a manner that if you follow the geography, China is technically in control of some of the most important ports around the world. But looking back at our personal concerns with Panama, I think, and I'm speaking based on common sense, it is the worst thing any country can do to have another country control your ports. Ports of entry is the most important point logistically and strategically for any country. If you allow in a country to control your ports, the goods and services, how you determine what is coming and what is going, you cannot control in its totality everything that comes through that port because you have handed over the reins to a foreign nation.
But why would Panama do something like that? What would cause Panama to take a step like that?
Well, the only thing I can say, not only Panama, but some of the other countries throughout the world, why they will do that is the money. The amount of monies, and ironically enough, I couldn't find anything saying exactly how much they were paying. The only thing I found was saying it's a 50-year contract. So if Panama got $500 million for that contract, that's money that's going to be spent under that administration who signed the agreement. But that money disappears once that administration is out of office because there's nobody can tell me right now specifically where is that money? What is it used for currently? So that in itself put Panama at a disadvantage because you have given the reins to this foreign country to control one of the most important logistics of any country. The port is it's the most primary real estate in terms of goods and services other than the airport.
And it's a money maker.
Yeah, and it is. But ironically, where is the money that they receive to allow this to happen? Where are those monies right now? That's a question that I could not answer because I couldn't find any document that clearly outlines what the money was, what was the purpose.
Well, there's got to be some type of research to back up the amount of power that was given to China. Why not? And knowing a little bit, I know it has to be big money involved there. And why was it done? And what is the purpose? And overall, what did Panama get in exchange for something like that?
Well, they got money, I'm sure. They got money, but you know, money is fluid. You know,
it goes and it comes.
Established, yeah, it's not something structured that you can say, okay, China built a hospital in Panama, thoroughly paid for all the expenses. No, when you put money up front, it means that you have to have some plan of action. Where is the money going to be spent? Unless you don't want it to be known, ironically, what are you doing with it? Because this is the people's money. The port is part of the country. It's not a private entity. Now it is.
I would like to think that the Panamanian people would like to know what's involved and what type of money was received and what's going on. They have a right to know as Panamanian because that's their land, that's their country.
Well, I pray when they see this video, because I'm going to circulate it with some of the people I know in Panama in government currently, and I hope that they will take the initiative to pursue what has been the outcome of this transaction. Sadly enough, a lot of times people are not ready to take on those actions because they are in a precarious position where they don't want to infuriate the government.
And it's sensitive. It's also very sensitive.
Yeah, but depending on who you're working for. You see, if you took these jobs as councilmen and the other positions that you take in government, if you took it for the people, then you are not worrying about repercussions because you are doing exactly what you were hired to do. If you are very cautious about bringing this forward, then you are not serving the people. You are serving the disciplines that making the contracts and agreements arbitrary, capriciously, and I don't want to say condescendingly, but that's basically what it adds up to if the people can't see it in black and white.
Well, I think it goes without saying it's imperative and highly important that the country and the citizens of that nation know exactly how this was done and why it was done. We have approximately maybe about 2 or 3 minutes. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I think or folks in the United States and all over the world wants to know, after the transfer and Panama took over the canal, they run it in a positive way? Is it making the amount of money that the Americans made when they were running the canal?
Oh yes, it's operating effectively beyond what anyone else had imagined. It has been almost a perfect operation when you take into consideration the casualties that could occur, if there's any major discrepancies. No, it has been effectively run. They'll get an A+ right now in terms of the operation, to the best of my knowledge. As far as the monetary gains, obviously, Panama is getting the lion's shares. There's no intermediary anymore. You don't have that third party. Panama was getting the crumbs off the table. Right now, Panama is getting anywhere around $2.6 billion with a B annually. Wow. So therefore, it has been a tremendous success as far as the monetary benefits. What I really concern myself with is, okay, we're talking 2.6 billion. The question that I have in mind is, show me where are the benefits that Panama have derived out of the $2.6 billion. There was a hospital that they started to build in Cologne about 4 years ago. I may be losing sight of when it started. It's still in disarray. It was never completed. I was in Panama. I met with the alcalde, and this conversation came up, and I'm not putting him on the chopping block. I'm just speaking truth again. That was supposed to be one of the initiatives completed by February. Granted, we had the coronavirus, so that interrupted a lot of plans. But a hospital is not something that you can just say, put it off. Your hospital is consistent with your population growth. And that's what troubles me, is that hospital was never completed. So therefore, we just mentioned 2.6 billion and we can't even complete the hospital. That leaves you with a question mark. Where did the money go?
Well, kudos to Panama for running the canal in an effective and positive way, and you know, with an A+. Well, like anything else, when it comes to money, I think the nation, the people, have a right to know, and I'm quite sure there should be some type of explanation as to what these funds are going and what they're doing with it. In terms of the hospital, that's a little bit sad that it hasn't been completed. Cologne is a beautiful place, and it should have a hospital with all the technologies and all the new things. And so I'm a little bit surprised that that has not been finished yet. Is there any idea when that hospital will be finished?
Well, I was told when I sat with the alcalde, Alcalde Lee, I sat with him, and he said to me that as far as his interaction, I guess, with the president, I don't know what dialogue they had, but he left me with the impression that everything should be moving forward, because this was last July. and that should have been completed as far as the hospital by somewhere around February of this year. It never transpired. I don't know all the intricacies involved in why was it not completed. I attributed it now, I'm saying coronavirus, but that still don't hold water because coronavirus started anywhere around March, because I was in Panama at the time.
Well, Mr. Marshall, in behalf of the family of the Grapevine, I want to take this opportunity to tell you thank you so much for accepting our invitation and for you discussing important things about the Canal Zone, the Panama Canal, and the things that have taken place. We don't have words to thank you for your kindness, your input, and all this great amount of powerful information that you have given to our viewing audience this afternoon.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I find it exciting and interesting, and I pray that many of our people who were born in Panama, especially, you always have to start with the ones who are affected the most. I pray that they take the initiative to listen and try to learn and continue to fight the good fight and encourage themselves that we're going to have to build a nation based on the people's needs and not a nation that has just an appearance of things, but denying the truth thereof.
Those powerful words will end right here. And again, in behalf of the family of the Grapevine, I want to say to my audience, thank you for watching this program. Very interesting about one of the greatest wonders of the world, the Panama Canal. Y que viva Panamá,
Viva Panamá.
siempre.
Okay, bendiciones.